Toyota have been using what is called the Kaizen system to enhance how well they can develop cars. And by the end of this video, I want to explain how you can use the exact same system to make you a better developer. I also want to give you 5 specific areas for Python development. These are things which you could take today and go off and try and make you a better developer. Now, before we jump into how to apply this to our code, here's a super simple 1-minute history lesson. Kaizen is a Japanese term which roughly translates to continuous improvement, and it reflects an internal process of realizing potential and achieving personal growth. The modern concept originated in Toyota after World War II, and Toyota exemplified Kaizen by embedding it into their own production. This is known today as the Toyota Production System, which serves as an inspiration for many other car manufacturers as well. The simple way of describing how this works is that it emphasizes daily improvements and employee involvement. So the people who worked at the plant were asked to identify areas to reduce waste and increase efficiency. And rather than making massive sweeping changes across the entire plant, the changes were small, fast, almost agile-like in manner, and the system showed that to get really good results, you don't need to do anything dramatic. You can do simple, small changes, but just be consistent with them over time. A lot of the Kaizen philosophy reminds me of how we do software in the industry, and I think it's one thing you could easily take and turn it into a system to make your code a lot better. So what I propose is a new system to help you get better at code. So rather than thinking, okay, I'm gonna do leak code for a month, or I'm gonna do this massive project until it's all done, what you could do quite easily and quite simply is pick one part of your code and say, okay, this week is purely gonna be about, for example, improving logging. So I'm gonna code as normal, how I normally do stuff, but I'm going to pay real close attention to how I set up logging, how I log to file, how I log to standard output, where I keep the logs, etc. And then maybe next week you can shift into something like looking at comprehensions or functional programming. I think this way of kind of coding and trying to get better over time by doing little topics each week, each month, each 2 months, whatever, might be a really nice kind of novel way to improve your coding. So what I want to do now is suggest 5 different areas just to kind of get the ball rolling. So if you're, say, pretty new to Python, you've got a few projects under your belt, what I'd recommend is giving yourself an appropriate time frame. So this could be maybe do this for 2 weeks, could be a month, could be 2 months, whatever. Kind of dictate it around how often you're coding. If you're coding every day, this could be something that you just do on a week-by-week basis. And I want to give you 5 areas of coding which I think you could implement today. So maybe you could write it in the top of your calendar and say, this week I'm focusing specifically on X. Next week could be something else. So you could do these 5 I can recommend now, and once those 5 weeks are done, or 5 months, whatever, you could then give yourself your own specific areas to improve on. And to really make this as Kaizen as possible, you want to pick areas which you're not good at. You want to pick areas which you think you need help with in general. So maybe you're stuck with writing functions or classes. I think it makes sense to do these on purpose. So make sure you kind of prioritize the things you're bad at. Make sure you front load your schedule by saying, right, these first 2 weeks, I'm not very good at classes. I might focus on classes for 2 weeks. Maybe 2 weeks after I can jump into things like class methods, static methods, and eventually, yeah, you might get good at them. So it's definitely worth trying. So if you're fairly new to Python, the first thing I would recommend getting good at, suppose this is for your first week, is logging. No particular reason, but of course, if you're doing it on a week-by-week basis, you've got a lot of time to cram a lot of things in. So if you're writing code maybe every day, maybe your first week could just be spent on working out, how do I initialize a logger at the top of my code? How do I log the different error levels? And maybe try a range of different scenarios where you can just fit logging in somehow into your code. If you're starting off as a beginner and you want to kind of get better or maybe go into the industry, logging is really important. You're going to be doing logging an awful lot. So practicing it right from the very start, I think, is a great idea. For week 2 or block number 2, whatever blocks you're doing, I think error handling is also a great idea to have a look at as well. Especially for those looking to go into the industry, error handling is really important. And for this, I think what could be a really nice idea is look at all of Python's built-in exceptions, look at how they're raised, look at how to re-raise errors, look at how to build try, catch, except, finally blocks, and spend a whole week just looking at your code, thinking about areas where your code might fail, and then try and build in the correct try and except blocks. So say, for example, we have a program which is reading in a file, parsing the file, and giving an output. Reading in the file can result in a number of different errors, so perhaps writing try and except blocks to capture those could be a great idea. Number 3 is going to be on file input and file output. In particular, I think if you're new to Python, a lot of people tend to use the file equals open. They read a file, they do some stuff, and then they close it again. A good change is going into the with open and using context managers. And in practice, context managers are a whole lot better than just using a standard file open and file.close later on. So spending a whole week working with a range of different file types, so working with things like JSON, CSV, text files, figuring out how to open these using a with open block, doing some stuff, and then moving on with your code. You'll notice obviously when the with open block ends, the file is automatically closed. Spending a whole week understanding how that works with a range of different file types, doing a range of operations, so things like JSON, could be pandas, data frames of CSVs, Excel files, text files, whatever, could be pictures. Working with a range of different files on purpose for a week, again, I think is a great way to improve your overall Python skills. Number 4 is a bit more generic, I guess, but things like using classes. So say, for example, you take someone who's fairly new. A lot of people, I know I especially did this, is you'd write all your code in one kind of gigantic module. Yeah, it would work, but it'd be horrible to look at. It'd be nasty. It's one gigantic mess of code. One way you can easily improve kind of straight out of the bat is just splitting up your code into its own classes, its own modules, its own functions, whatever. Having a go at just taking this approach, especially with old code. I did a video a while ago about how to make the best use of your old code, and this is one of them. Take a massive kind of script you've got from the past and have a go at splitting it up into its own classes with their own methods, correctly written. I think that's a great practice in restructuring. In the industry, you have to do a lot of reformatting old code, a lot of kind of restructuring, etc. So that's really good. And it'll teach you better principles as well. So one of the solid principles is the SRP, for single responsibility principle. That's a mouthful. And it argues that a class should have kind of one job, one reason to change. Same for functions, same for methods. So spending a whole week just thinking, okay, I have a program to design. What distinct classes do I need? What methods do I need? And what do they do? That is a great way to kind of make your code much cleaner, much better for other people, and it's a nice way to kind of future-proof and make your code easier to modify and maintain as well. And the last one that's a bit out of the box is just simply problem solving. You've probably heard of things like LeetCode, there's Edabit, there's quite a few different sites now which just offer the same thing of here's a question, solve it, it'll run some tests, etc. LeetCode's a great one, perhaps a bit on the hard side for beginners, but there still are some fairly easy questions there as well. So spending a whole week just looking at different problems, different types of problems, a lot of them kind of involve maths, some involve dictionaries or hash maps, whatever, some involve sets, classes, looking at a range of different problems kind of over the course of a whole week or whatever. That is a great way to see some common issues you might see in practice. And one thing this will do, it'll teach you nicely about optimization. One of the good things about LeetCode is that your code can be correct, but if it takes too long, the code will time out and you'll lose. So it can teach you an awful lot about how to write the answer to a solution in a really nice, efficient way. So those 5 I've outlined are very generic, very kind of simple. What I'd recommend doing if you want to take this up yourself is perhaps starting with these 5, do it over a time period that suits you. So it could be every week I'll change to a new thing and make myself better at that. Could be every 2 weeks, could be every month. I'm really keen to hear if you guys try this and perhaps if you think there's ways you can make this better, or is this something that you guys already do? It's something that I've been trying for a couple of weeks and I'm going to continue trying as well. So I might do a video in the future as to how well it's gone. We'll see. But yeah, cheers for watching guys, and I'll see you all in the next session.